Hi, welcome back. Over the last week, I've had a chance to get to know each of you a little better, and I've also had a chance to see your completed assignments. Overall, I'm very impressed with your work, and I'm especially happy to discover that you are intelligent, critical thinkers, and that all of you are serious about college and the careers that you are pursuing. Obviously, this makes my job much easier, and frankly, it just makes my work that much more fun. So, congratulations on having a great first week with this course, and I'm looking forward to learning more about each of you as we move on to the next module. I hope that last week's exercise was helpful in giving you a behind-the-scenes look at a web page. Of course, the page you created is a pretty simplistic example of most web pages you'll find out there, but the basic concept is the same. The HTML that you write is a set of instructions for a web browser for how it should display text and images. How complex you want those instructions to be is up to you. It all depends on the page design you are trying to create. Just remember that as we get further along in the course, you'll have an opportunity to create much more interesting page designs than what you did last week. And that's because we'll be using Dreamweaver to create those pages. Later in this video, I'll talk more about Dreamweaver and how to get started with the program. For your assignments this week, I'd like to start by having you watch a video where Margaret Gold Stewart speaks at a TED Talks conference in March of 2014. I won't tell you what company she works for because it's one of the questions on your quiz for this week, but I will say that Stewart probably has one of the most prestigious careers that anyone who is interested in web design could ever want. And that's exactly why I like Margaret Gold Stewart. Not so much because she has a fancy job at a leading internet company, but because she firmly believes that our job as designers is to do what's best for our web visitors. Not what's best for showing off what we know about HTML, not what's best for winning awards, not what's best for building a site that uses the latest and greatest technology. I have to agree with Stewart that the most important skill to have in this industry is to know who you are designing for. So I think you'll find the video interesting, and I'm looking forward to reading your comments in our class forum. This week's quiz covers some of the topics that Margaret Gold Stewart talks about in her presentation. She points out some very interesting statistics about just how many people are using websites like Google, YouTube, and Facebook. The numbers are astronomical, and it clearly shows that we have entered a new paradigm in regard to the publishing and mass communication industries. Now, I don't normally ask students to memorize a lot of random facts and figures, but I do think the numbers that Stewart mentions in her presentation might be good to record in your brain somewhere, just so you can have an intelligent conversation about the web with your colleagues and maybe even with prospective employers. This is all great information to have when you interview for that dream job you've always wanted. This week I want everyone to start getting familiar with the Dreamweaver program that we'll be using throughout this course. I'm assuming that by now everyone has Dreamweaver installed and that you are using either the CS6 version of the software or you have a Creative Cloud subscription. Most of the screenshots you'll see in my videos throughout this course are taken from the Creative Cloud version of Dreamweaver. So if you're using CS6, keep in mind that some of the screenshots that I show may not be exactly what you see on your screen. However, both versions of the software are very similar, and I don't believe this will present any problems for us. Now, before we get too far into the program itself, I want to talk about doing a little bit of work to prepare a location for the web pages you'll be creating later on in this course. As you know by now, a web page is an HTML file, and that file needs to reside somewhere on a computer. Later in this course, we'll talk about uploading your files to a web server so that anyone in the world can see your website. But for now, I want you to keep your files on your own computer, where you can work on them as you need to. Keep in mind that even though the files are located on your computer, you can still see what the finished product will look like simply by opening the files in a web browser, or by using a feature in Dreamweaver that allows you to preview your work. So what do I mean by setting up a location for your web page files? In most cases, we're talking about creating just a simple folder on your computer that will contain all of the files for a website. In computer terminology, this is called a root directory. Most web designers use the root directory to locate the main pages of a website, like the home page, which is often named index.html. Web designers might also use this directory to locate a sitemap, which is a file that contains links to all the pages within a website. Now, a typical website often contains many different types of files. So to help keep everything organized and easy to find, it's a good idea to create folders within the root directory for these different types of files. For example, the images for a website are often kept, logically enough, in an images folder. If a website includes documents that are not HTML files, most web designers will locate those files in their own unique folders. For example, a folder that contains JavaScript files, or a folder that contains external style sheets. You might also want to create folders that contain different sections of your website. For example, if you were building a website about pets, you might want to locate all pages related to dogs in one folder and all pages related to cats in another folder. Before we jump into the Dreamweaver program, I want you to first create a root directory, just as I described. Simply create a folder somewhere on your computer. It can be on your desktop, on a flash drive, or anywhere that's easy for you to find. Be sure to name the folder with something that you'll remember. Now let's open Dreamweaver and take a look at the program. When you open Dreamweaver for the first time, your screen will look something like this. And you'll probably see a message box somewhere in the middle of your screen, like this. All of the information in this box, if you need it, can be found elsewhere in the program. For example, a list of the files you've worked on recently, buttons for creating a new document, and links to online help pages. Once you're more familiar using Dreamweaver, I think you'll find that it's not necessary to have this message box come up every time you open the program. So I suggest that you click the Don't Show Again button here. Now I realize it's tempting to immediately start building a web page as soon as you have the Dreamweaver program open. But I'm going to suggest that you take a few minutes first to set up and customize the program to create a basic workspace that you like. Of course, you can always go back in later and change the look and feel of the program once you have a better idea of what works for you. But before we get started, I want to show you where you can make these changes and also give you a few suggestions. Go to the menu tabs at the top of your screen, click Edit. Then select Preferences, which is located near the bottom. Now we're at what you might call the main control center of the entire software program. From here you can decide exactly how you want Dreamweaver to look, feel, and behave while you're creating your web pages. This can make a huge difference in your overall productivity because we all have our own preferences for how we like to get our work done. And this is the place to customize Dreamweaver to work better for you. Now, I'm not going to go over every option listed here. We could spend hours doing that. I'll leave you on your own to do a little exploring and maybe experiment with some different settings just to see what some of your choices are. While we're here in the general category, notice that the first option is in regard to the welcome screen that I had you shut off earlier. If for any reason you would like it back, here is where you set that preference. If for some reason you don't like some of the default colors that Dreamweaver uses, especially the colors you see when you edit your HTML code, you can change all that here. You can also change the font and the font size that Dreamweaver shows when displaying HTML code. One thing I suggest before you start working on a web document is to make sure you have a clean, uncluttered space to do your work. Have you ever opened a program on your computer and it looked like this? I know I have. As you can see, the tools, windows, and panels nearly cover your HTML document completely, which makes it very difficult to work, especially if you're using a small computer screen. Of course, there are keyboard commands you can use to temporarily hide all the panels, but my suggestion is to open only what you need for a given project. First start with an empty workspace and then add the tools and panels one at a time as you need them. With a little practice, you'll find out which combination of tools works best for you. Now let's try creating a new document and see how it looks in the workspace. At the top menu, click File and then New. Now we have a few choices to make. Later on, as you become more experienced using Dreamweaver, this dialog box will be very helpful in letting you create a variety of different documents that you might use when building a website. For example, from here you can tell Dreamweaver to create an HTML document, a cascading style sheet, a JavaScript document, or a PHP document. For now, let's just focus on creating a simple HTML document. What you see next should look familiar. Notice the HTML code at the top left of the screen. Obviously, one of the best things about using a web page software program like Dreamweaver is that most of the HTML code is created for you. Now take a look at the 4 tabs located just above your document window. Dreamweaver provides 4 different ways in which to view your web page document: Code View, Split View, Design View, and Live View. To give you a better idea of how this works, I'm going to paste in the HTML code that we worked on last week. In Code View, you can see and edit the HTML code of your document. In Split View, you can see both the HTML code and a WYSIWYG preview. Most designers I know prefer the Split View for editing web pages. In Design View, a WYSIWYG preview fills the entire screen. In Live View, Dreamweaver lets you see what your document looks like in a web browser. Let's go back to this split view and I'll show you how easy it is to edit your HTML document and see the results immediately on the same screen. Let's try changing the font size. Be sure to click the refresh button to see your changes. Notice in the design view that Dreamweaver has applied the change. I think you'll find the split view very helpful for editing code and working out the smaller details of your web page design. Now at this point, you might be wondering, when are we going to start working on real web pages that look more exciting than this? When I think of all the stunning examples of web design out there, I'm sure you're eager to get started working on some of your own designs. Now let me assure you that you will have plenty of opportunity in this course to develop some great web designs that include all the graphic design and photography that make websites so attractive. All I ask is that you be patient during these first couple of weeks as we take kind of a slow approach to understanding not only how to use the Dreamweaver program, but how to approach the task of designing a site that is useful to your visitors. With that in mind, what I'd like you to do this week is 1. Create a root directory somewhere on your computer. In that folder, I want you to save an HTML document with the file name index.html. This file can be anything you like. It can simply be a blank document that you create in Dreamweaver, or it can be the HTML file that you created for your assignment last week. Also in your root directory, I want you to add a folder named Images. You'll need this folder next week to locate a few images that you'll be using in your next assignment. 2. If you haven't done so already, I want you to start poking around in the Dreamweaver program just to become more familiar with how things behave and to explore some of the different options you'll see in the menus. There are many, many things to learn about Dreamweaver, and I can guarantee you that there is not enough time in one semester to become an expert user of this software. However, this course will provide you a great start, and the skills you learn here will definitely put you on the right path if you decide to pursue a career in designing websites. So that's it for this week. Let me know if you have any questions, and I look forward to hearing from you in the class forum. Have a good week.